Come on, join us. It's the Empower Talk. Empower Show. The Empower Talk. The Empower Show. Empower Talk Show.
Hey, welcome to the EmpowerTalk podcast with yours truly, PJ Edmund. I'm always honored and blessed to be able to share with you what I think are inspirational, challenging conversations about what we need to do to be the better us, to better ourselves. I want to talk to you. Let's have a conversation about the catalyst moment. What is the catalyst moment? I'm going to be doing a series of podcasts from this book that I've written entitled Finding Flow in Empty Places. And this is just a great read. You really have to get your hands on this, and I'll share information later on in the podcast where you can actually purchase this through our online bookstore. But this is an amazing read for anyone that is trying to get beyond things that seem to slow us down and impede us from becoming who we really want to be. And we have to identify all of those things that slow us down or make us not as active and as progressive as we want to be. And it happens so easily and so quickly. So finding flow in empty places really speaks to how do we get unstuck and how do we clear the way so that we can challenge ourselves and so we can climb to the next level. We can move to the next dimension and really always keep ourselves hungry and thirsty for whatever is coming next. I think it's just an opportunity to have this conversation. By the way, this picture on the front cover is, yes, a picture of Dunn's River Falls in Jamaica. So a place, when I visited there, it was just amazing. And this is where the inspiration for the book came from, in that no matter what was happening, here in the middle of nowhere was this rush of energy, this rush of power, this relentless ability just to keep moving. And I thought it's such an incredible sight that it inspired me to write this book, Finding Flow in Empty Places. Listen to this. So finding flow in empty places directly and avidly speaks to those places within all of us that incessantly search for a catalyst that will ignite and launch us into the next phase of who we are or the next phase of ourselves. We need something to kind of push us there. We need something to advance us. And sometimes you don't have the choice about what it is or what circumstances or situations really push us there. But all of our lives, we're looking for a catalyst, something that just motivates us beyond the norm and literally gets us over certain things so that we can accomplish things. So finding that catalyst is so key. Find that moment each time in our lives, each week, each day, each month, that just takes us out of normality and allows us to move into the greater things of who we are, and feeling the energy and the motivation and the spark to get things together. So all of us are looking for this catalyst, this moment that helps to define us and helps us push beyond the normal, helps us to move beyond normality and move to exceptional, and sometimes move us to ridiculous, those areas that we really want to get to. But in order to get there, to overcome the things that impede us and get into the things that inspire us, are really a key part of our lives, of how we process and how we grow. So life is riddled with starts and stops. All of us can identify with that, ups and downs, and all making an effort to help us to discover those places both of peace and passion, which become a daily passion, a daily challenge. Discovering peace and passion, discovering times when to kind of accept our circumstances and accept what we're in, but also those times when we need passion to wake us up and to do something exceptional, to do something out of the ordinary. It's really easy to get drawn into the mundane of life and the regular flow of our schedules and our lives, and sometimes it's really difficult to break out of the norm because we are creatures of habit. But finding flow in empty places always wants us to examine where is it that we're going, so that we don't fall asleep at the wheel, that we don't become our own enemy, so we can get our thinking out of the way and make sure that we're always moving towards something that's greater. Life at times, with its relentless drive to constantly improve and be better, often leaves us thirsting for more of ourselves. Is that you? Knowing that there's more, knowing that you can accomplish more, knowing that you are more brilliant and you're clever than you ever thought you were. And yet we need this opportunity. We need the thirst to continue to be there. We need to stay hungry. We need to stay thirsty for more of us. And sometimes it's those moments in our lives that actually challenge us to examine where we are and not to accept, to recognize that even a lull in activity, and I'm not talking about always on the go and being relentless 24 hours a day, 24/7. I'm talking about recognizing the times for peace where we can relax and regroup and be refreshed and reboot. Those are important seasons in our lives. But also not to stay there too long. Sometimes we have a tendency that after we've done something and accomplished something quite wonderful, we have a tendency to sit back, and sometimes those moments, those days turn into weeks, and those weeks turn into months, and those months turns into a longer period of time because we somehow lose the energy and the spark and the catalyst to get back up and say, what's next? What's next? If you're having that kind of conversation with yourself, this podcast is for you. Always wanted to know what's next. And so we have to be able to move from peace to passion. We have to move from one area to another seamlessly so we can really begin to count our advancement and to measure our progress so we can become the better you. Listen to this. We can never quite predict in our experience when those places of creative emptiness will either begin or end. And the real us, the one that's positive and decisive, will reemerge. We can never predict what happens. Every day is a challenge. Every day is a new situation. Every day it's filled with new opportunities, new setbacks from which we can learn. Remember, it's never that we win or lose. It's always that we win or learn. And every day we have to face different experiences that really attack our creativeness and bring us sometimes into what I call creative emptiness. And sometimes it's not because of anything you've done. It can be mental, it can be psychological, it can be physical, it can be physiological. Places that just arrive in our lives that we have to navigate, we have to interpret to make sure that we are actually making the kind of creative decisions that keep us sharp and keep us hungry and keep us moving. And so we don't know this flow of energy, this flow of creativity, sometimes just appear and disappears quite innocently. And yet somehow we have to be able to manage those moments of emptiness or those lows. We can always ride the highs, but we also have to make sure that we are able to manage and navigate and learn from the lows. We never know when the positive and that decisive person will reemerge again. Sometimes we lose ourselves and really can't understand why from one moment to the next, from one week to the next, our levels or our output of creativity plummets, or our output of creativity just heightens. It's one of those things that we have to recognize that life is all about. But everything comes either to push us or to impede us. Either to push us or impede us. And as leaders and entrepreneurs and business people, we have to make sure that while we're working on our products and while we're working on our services, we are also working on ourselves to make sure that we can identify when we run into these empty places and that we need to find flow again. We can flow. We've experienced the flow. We know what it's like to flow. We want to flow. And so even as we begin to understand that, we have to make sure that we identify where we are and actually do the things that are necessary to keep our creativeness healthy, to keep ourselves creatively happy, creatively sound, and creatively forward thinking. Once upon a time, our work was about, it's important, and I think we can all identify with that. It's important, the things that we do. It's important that we engage in our dreams and our visions. It was once about importance. It was about recognition. It was about applause, and there's nothing wrong with those elements. But that's not the entire process. That's not everything that we should desire to be. We now know that these phases are, to be fair, short-lived, and are controlled by the approval, appraisal, and the appreciativeness of others, and not by what we genuinely believe about ourselves. Sometimes we can live on the credit or the recognition of others, and still inside, still feel very empty and very non-productive. And so we cannot always get lulled into just living by our approval ratings or by our press or by our public opinion or even by our publicity. Sometimes we can be drawn into things that really begin to stifle our creativity, and we have to know those environments And as I've mentioned before, those rooms that cause us to breathe. And so we all have to look for this catalyst moment that we recognize, and it happens sometimes without schedule. It happens without rhyme or reason, but when it happens, we have to learn then to connect to it and to feed it and to work with it, because we never know at any point in time that creative moment, that flow of ingenuity, that flow of just logistical thinking will disappear. So we always have to make sure that we need to find our flow. We know that the flow is there because we participated in it, we know it, and we understand it. And so sometimes we have to just look at our environments and try to change something. So here's what we need to do with our catalyst moment. First of all, we have to recognize those situations that bind us, that hold us, that diminish us, those situations that make us weak and lethargical without any emphasis or without any oomph. We need to recognize when they're happening. We need to know that when we move into those areas where we are non-productive, we need to recognize the environments that we're in, the people that we're around, and the things that kind of rob us of the joy and the excitement about moving into new directions and into new dimensions. Second, we have to face it, and we have to face those things. We can't run from everything. We can't ignore it. We can't live in denial. There are some things that we have to absolutely face and deal with the consequences of those times, and not use it to brood or just to be low or to feel depressed, but recognize that we have to, in those moments, we have to rebuild and re-energize and think flow. Think flow. Even when we're low, think flow. Think about how is it that we return to those levels of productivity. And then never stop dreaming, never stop driving, never stop moving, never stop thinking, never stop planning, never stop envisioning. The moment we stop the mentality of our lives, the vision phase of our lives, the dream phase of our lives, whenever we stop allowing those moments to be the priority, is when we can sink into areas where we absolutely will get stuck, and those empty places absolutely will occur more than we want them to. And so part of this, in this part of part one of finding flow in empty places, is simply to say, we've got to find this catalyst moment. And when you recognize it, just as a stream gains energy as it flows, just as life can gain energy and sometimes impede us, we've got to recognize those seasons and times in our lives where we just need to make sure that we don't stay in emptiness, or we don't stay in a rut, or we don't stay down too long. Never stay down too long. Give yourselves a moment to feel indifferent or to feel sad about things not working out the way that you'd planned. But that has to be short-lived, because the main objective when we get into an empty place is to make sure that we find our flow again. So this week, find your flow. Shake yourself, begin to recognize and look at the things that you've accomplished, and take a lot of respect and a lot of pride out of what you've done. But also recognize that these moments don't last long, but they will, unless we find ourselves with the ability to challenge ourselves, to stay thirsty, to stay hungry, and to use the catalyst moment to bring us to where we want to be. That's my conversation with you today. Again, go ahead and we're going to share information about where to buy this book. I'm going to be doing a series of podcasts on this issue, Finding Flow in Empty Places. It's going to inspire you. It's going to teach you about how things can happen so quickly, but how we quickly have to respond so that we can be as effective as we are and maintain a level of perfection or effectiveness as we go through our daily lives. This is always an amazing time to be able to share with you. So thank you for joining me in this conversation. Thank you for being a part of the EmpowerTalk podcast. And again, let's find our flow in empty places by recognizing who we are and what we need to do to overcome. Join me again. I'll be right here with yours truly, PJ Edmund, on the EmpowerTalk podcast. See you next time.